Hello and welcome. My name is Al Marati. I'm here to help our medical students in the American Academy of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery prepare for the residency interviews. We're excited to welcome you to otolaryngology. I'm an otolaryngologist here in Seattle, Washington. I had the privilege of serving as the president of the American Academy of Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery in 2018 and 19. And one of my legacy projects working with the Academy leadership is to really help support the needs of our most important members, our medical students. I'm joined today by a group of wonderful committed otolaryngologists who are program directors for these residency programs that you're applying to. I want to have them introduce themselves. Then we're going to go over a list of thoughts and experiences and get their input on some of their best advice they've learned, really from the heart, not just process, but how to get the feel right to feel prepared for the residency interview. It's a stressful time. We appreciate that and we understand it. We remember it, even though it was 500 years ago for me. So one by one, in no particular order, I'm going to ask Dr. Chelius to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Danny Chelius. I'm a pediatric otolaryngologist at Texas Children's Hospital and Baylor College of Medicine. I'm the past coordinator for the annual meeting, and seeing this session come together at the meeting this year and having a chance to visit with all these incredible program directors was really a goal that I'm glad we saw accomplished this year. So I'm very grateful to be with y'all.
Right on. Thank you. And Dr. Glazer next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Glazer. I am a head and neck surgeon at the University of Wisconsin, where I am also program director. And thank you, Dr. Marati, for inviting me on this panel and webinar.
Right on. Dr. Lee.
Hello, I'm Yan Lee. I'm the Associate Program Director at Yale School of Medicine at the Otolaryngology Residency Program, and I do facial plastics.
Right on. Dr. Mukhajan.
Hi, I'm Duncan Micklejohn. I'm the Program Director at University of New Mexico and a general otolaryngologist. And I just want to thank Al for the opportunity to do this again and hopefully reach the folks who weren't able to make it to the session at Academy.
Thank you, and well said. Dr. Garber.
Hi, David Garber. I'm the Associate Program Director at New York Medical College, and I'm a laryngologist. And thanks again, Dr. Marati and the Academy for letting us do this again.
Right on. I appreciate this opportunity. Let's move forward. Everyone's got a lot of stuff to do, and it's a wonderful time to talk about this. I just want to remind everyone, we're not going to be talking about signaling in this. There's tons to know and learn. There are other resources available for that. Feel free to email us through the Academy to get some more resources, but I think you all are pretty savvy about this. So it's not a topic for today. We're not signaling. Just want to give some good news to folks, just the field you're applying to. I'm sure it's stressful, the uncertainty about, am I going to match? Where am I going to match? How it's going to impact my training and my choices. You put so much work to getting to this point, and now there's this uncertain moment, and a lot of it goes into preparing for the interview, and we understand that. Otolaryngology is in really good shape. There are challenges across medicine, but you're entering a field with wonderful people. They're your people, so we're glad you're coming to join us. There's so much to learn and from each other. Please come to our Academy meetings, get involved. If you're not sure how to start, give me a call, give me an email, and that'll be available through the webinar. We'll get you going, okay? So great choice. Welcome aboard. Pivoting. You've done your applications, you've gotten your interviews, hooray, and now you're getting ready for the interviews. I just thought I'd frame it a couple different ways. I'm going to start out with a question for our panel, and doctors, I'll just pick one of you, and then please hop in after the first one if you have something to say. That's nice and informal. There's a lot of culture that goes around this, some standard advice, and so I'll start with Dr. Glazer. Tell me stuff that is way more important than an applicant might think. Stuff that probably maybe gets a little lost that you would say, hey, this is important. You should pay attention to this. How about this one, Dr. Glazer? How would you advise an applicant?
Sorry, are we talking about just on their application or during
preparing for interviews?
Preparing for the interviews. Well, I mean, I would say Can I ask the way less important? Because I think that one's a little bit easier. I think it's less important if you aren't a super extroverted individual. Like I think that you can still do really well in an interview, because I do hear sometimes people say like, oh, I'm just not an extroverted person. I don't do interviews well. Like that's okay. We still just want you to be able to talk about yourself, talk about your interests, talk about why you want to do otolaryngology, and just kind of get a sense of what kind of person you are, which I think you can do even if you're like deathly afraid of public speaking or group speaking, or really introverted. I think you can still get that across well in an interview.
So don't, if you know yourself to be someone who isn't as immediately comfortable and the situation, don't sweat it. Be yourself.
Yeah,
Right
exactly.
on. Right on. Often, believe me, I mean, I look at my fellow faculty like it's not easy for them, they are the same people as the applicants in a lot of ways, right? They share. So that person across the screen from you or across the desk from you may be feeling the same way. So being yourself is important. Anyone want to pile on? Thank you, Dr. Glazer, for that one. Stuff that not to worry about so much. Any other folks want to add to that?
I think now it's the calm before the storm, where you've already submitted all your signals and you've already submitted the application. Now you can take the time to really think about what you would like, what you would like in a residency program. Because during the interview, what you're trying to do is less a defense about your application. A lot of people are saying, I didn't score this well. Should I talk about that? Well, no, not really, because you've made it to the interview. That means on paper, you look great for that program. And so the interview is about just getting a sense of the personality, kind of getting a sense of the culture on both sides. And so I feel like that is one of the most important things that you want to glean from the interview process.
Dr. Lee, since you led on this, I'm got one for you to follow up on that. What might be, or maybe things you've been asked, what are questions that really show you that they're interested in the program in terms of getting to know the culture, or that are effective ways of getting to know the culture? Do you have any suggestions, or anyone?
Anyone, or should I go? Or
Either way, you first, or whatever you like.
I think two of the ways that I think are probably the best places to start are talking to people. So talking to your senior or the people that are at your program who have been to those programs or
Okay.
know anything about the programs. It's good to just talk to people about what they know about all the different programs. And secondly, of course, the website, because the website can give you a lot of nitty-gritty, detailed information about the people there and the program there.
Great. Anyone else want to join in on that general heading?
Yeah, I mean, the two questions that I think like to hear if you're going to ask about a residency program, especially if you're trying to learn about it, is really like kind of what that faculty member thinks is unique about their program and kind of what they're proud of in that program. I think that will help determine the culture that you see and kind of what makes that program special, and if you are the type of match for that program.
Right on, right on. Anybody else want to offer some things that you think are overemphasized or maybe underemphasized in preparation for interviews?
I've a few times gotten the question when we ask someone what questions they have for us and to gauge their interest about the program, where they've gone through my PubMed record and asked me about a paper that I wrote once upon a dream in 1993. And it doesn't necessarily always land
What are you
well.
telling me, Danny? Does it make you nervous?
It might make me a bit nervous. I might be less well versed on the history of that paper at this point,
Gotcha.
but it lets me know that they did their homework, but doesn't necessarily build a sense of rapport together. And so I think a lot of people worry about demonstrating their interest in the program in that way, or people get married to their application and want to make sure that they pull out very fine points in the application to make sure everything is covered. And I guess the point being, a natural conversation that flows well, that lets me get to know you, is more important than any fine detail. And so if you feel the conversation is going well, I just say lean into the conversation. Connect with the person across the screen is more important than any fine and especially any minute detail on either side.
Thank you, Danny. Dr. Micklejohn, would you like to add anything to this, or should we move on?
Yeah, no, I actually think that one of the things that is way more important that I think a lot of people don't think about because of the idea that they're defending their record or that you're kind of on on trial for all of your accomplishments is that we want to know, we don't know you personally. And what we want to know is why you think this program would be a great program for you. And so we're assuming that if you've applied, you've taken the interview, perhaps you've signaled that you genuinely think this is a program where you would thrive. And what I want to know in my interview is, why do you think that? What are the things about our program, about our location, that would make it a great fit for you? Because if you're thriving, then we're happy too. We want to thrive together. But that's something only the candidate knows, right? The candidate knows what would be important to them in a city, in an environment, in a program. And if you can articulate that well in your interview, you're actually making a great case for why you would be a good fit in that residency program.
Really well said. That makes
Al,
sense.
can I ask a follow-up question
Of course.
to that? When we were all together in person at the annual meeting, Duncan made a point that I think we were talking around a lot of different topics, and you said something, and the whole room went, ah, and you said you have to be authentic. And could you just share with everybody your thoughts on that, Duncan, because it really struck a chord.
Sure. I think that every residency program is good at certain things. Sometimes there's a lot of overlap, and sometimes those are fairly, I don't know if idiosyncratic is the right word, but those are things that are unique to that program. And you don't, as a candidate, you don't really do yourself any favors by trying to change who you are to fit what you think the residency interviewers want. First of all, you don't necessarily know what they want, so you may be wrong about your guess about what you're trying to be. But second of all, it's a two-way process. The interview is, we are interviewing you to learn about you, but we are also want to share what we're all about so that you know whether it would be a good fit for you. And so the best way to make that process come out well is to be genuine, to be authentic, and to allow us to get to know you. And I think that more than just enumerating your accomplishments, that's a lot of what the interview itself achieves.
Right on. Right on. I think I'm going to say something I can't prove, but I think this generation, not mine, of folks doing interviews are really probably truly tuned into this, more. A lot of us, I did, and my colleagues in there, like, oh, who do you know? Where did you do that? I think we're doing a better job, I hope, these days than we did in the past. So on that topic, you can see this is my slide from our live session. We had room for audience questions. One of the really important audience questions, which I'm sure will impact or be in the mind of some of our viewers, will be, how do we approach this? What advice do we have for folks that come from a medical school that don't have a home program? One of the answers was talk to other people around, see what they know about the program. Some folks don't have that to the same degree. What general advice is a big, broad topic to prepare applicants who don't have a home program? They've got the interview. Now what? Any different? Any
Well,
advice?
I think although I do hesitate to say, to go on social media and look at programs, but I do think you can get a glimpse there. I think another thing that you could do in terms of social media is reach out to them and ask, like, hey, I got an interview. I'm so excited about it. I'm wondering if there's a resident I can talk to beforehand or something. I know most residents are more than happy to connect and talk about their awesome program and stuff. And then you can get a little bit of a sense of the program before you even get there if you don't have any other connections. I would definitely first start with your home program, but if you don't have a home program, I think that's a reasonable option. And there's also national oto interest groups that you can reach out to and be connected with mentors or residents on those groups as well.
Okay, right on, right on. Well, not the same, but under the heading of folks who maybe we need to have a different set of conversations about are otolaryngologists who applied already once before. This is really a big and important group of members of our academy, big and important group of future otolaryngologists who, for whatever reason, they didn't get a spot they wanted the first time. If I can start maybe with David and then go on to Dr. Lee. What's your advice for folks who didn't match the first time? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's obviously a tough situation to be in, especially to having to gone through that the year prior. But I think you have to come back with the confidence that you're meant to be there, and this is the field that you want to practice. You need to be hopefully open about any reasons that you may not have matched or anything that and kind of how you address those over the past year, and if you did. And I think that's what you can do, and just know that people that haven't matched before match. We have a lot of a good amount of ENTs that I know that have been in that situation, and I think it's like we've talked about the same way that Duncan talked about authenticity earlier and being authentic. You just have to be that. We recognize the hardship that you've been in. I don't think any of us necessarily look at that any differently, but we want to know why you think that you've matched, and if you have the insight into that and what you've kind of done in the past year to hopefully address any problems that you have, and showing that you can address it or showing that you figure that out and recognizing that, I think is just as important.
Dr. Lee, do you want to, if you have comment on that, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that an applicant is reapplying shows persistence, perseverance. And I think that's commendable, extremely commendable. And if you land residency interviews for the things that you did during the time afterwards, that means that you've done something amazing. Okay, so I actually really look forward to chatting to reapplicants about what has their journey been like since then. What have they learned? What have they experienced? How much did they learn about themselves? How much they learned about kind of problem solving, finding out what went on the first time, and revamping themselves. And so I really do love that conversation, because it shows distance traveled, honestly, and it shows that you probably have a story to tell. And I look forward to chatting with reapplicants about that.
Right on, right on. Shall we move on? Any other comments on that?
I can just add something quickly to that, actually.
Take your time.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So, residency, when I think about a reapplicant, residency is 5 years of ferocious headwinds. You're going to be knocked down. You're going to have to pick yourself back up with a team of incredibly supportive and great people. But if you've been knocked down and you've picked yourself back up and you've made something out of that interval year, and you're able to share that with your program, that's to me a sign that you may have something in you that will allow you to get back up and keep going during residency. And so I think perceiving it as an opportunity to show off a strength or to show a skill developed is a great way to look at it.
Every otolaryngology program is full of faculty who didn't match the first time. Period. I know these people, and it's not a good or bad or no. I love that perspective. I think we'll probably handle our international grads a little later in this. It's an important topic. Let's move on to the next slide. We hinted at this a few spots, but let's get really in the nitty-gritty. You guys have been great about balancing the conversation. I'm going to start with Dr. Chelius. Getting background on programs. Somebody said go on the website, give them a call, social media. What else do you do?
I think that getting on the website is the most important thing to see what a program is trying to present about themselves. I think talking to your mentors about their friends at these other programs can also be helpful. Certainly, I love it when my student mentees come to the places they're interviewing, because it gives me a chance to get to talk about the people I love and respect at those places who I hope they get to meet. I would be a little circumspect about what you read on every applicant message board / website about programs. I think there's a lot of disinformation, intentional or not, out there about other programs, and so I think you have to take that with a grain of salt, honestly.
Okay. Somebody want to pile onto that? Getting background on programs? Dr. Chilius, that was the definitive answer, apparently. Right
I'm
on.
not sure if you mentioned it, Danny, but definitely talking to residents at your home program because they either know someone or they've interviewed at a lot of these places themselves. And so even if they've done nothing but interview, they can give you a pretty good sense of a program as well. So your own home residents are a great resource.
Right on. Right on. Love it. Love it. And the residents are rooting on there. You know, that they don't all know every student applicant, but they tend to know that crop of 2 or 4 or whatever. You know, that's really cool. I like it. Good. All right. Actual game day preparation. I think maybe we'll go with actually Dr. Glazer, if you don't mind. Like, what are some classic questions that you should like you'd advise like, hey, I don't know who does what, but this is pretty common. You should have an answer for X. Like each of you may want to give me one or give me a couple anyway.
I think you should definitely have an answer prepared for tell me about a time where you had a setback or a struggle or or some sort of like hurdle that you came over. That question I think tends to really get at how are you going to do when you have a setback in residency? Because like Dr. Chelius said, or I'm not sure who said it earlier, but somebody said, maybe it was Duncan said earlier, you are going to have setbacks in residency. And so telling me how you can get through that challenge will give me a really good sense of the future of our future together. So definitely prepare for that question.
What are some other ones to prepare for our panel? Come on, we all have got 4 or 5 classes we get asked.
Tell me about
I
yourself.
mean, I think the classics, tell me about yourself, why ENT, you should have a good idea for that. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Gets asked a lot.
Don't use them all up, man. We got a whole panel.
Yeah, sorry, okay, I'll start with that. What are your weaknesses? People just want to see insight. Not everyone's perfect, and they just want to see about ways that you're kind of always looking to improve. And that's kind of what we look for at that question is to
I gotta say,
recognize that.
somebody who gets stumped by what are your weaknesses, I find that to be a real turnoff. Like if they cannot come up with, or my favorite is like, well, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or I get it. I mean, it's a fake thing. I'm an interviewer sitting across the desk from some old guy asking you questions. But yeah, if there's an absence of insight as to what's going on, or maybe I don't create an environment that they feel comfortable telling me, I recognize that. But it's usually the former, not the latter in my experience. So what else you got? Dr. Lee, Dr. Chelius, Dr. Micklejohn. What are some classics that come up a lot?
Well, let's not forget the obvious, which is everything on your application is fair game.
Okay.
So definitely have a very succinct, not too rehearsed, but succinct description of everything that's on your application.
Okay, so prepared but not rehearsed. Okay. I feel like when Star Wars when he said fly casual but not too casual. Okay. I'm glad that everyone's
And I liked her word succinct in there. That's key too.
Yes. I don't know what that means. I'm joking. Brevity is not my thing. Dr. Chelius, what are some classics?
I think be prepared for whatever variety of ethics question. I feel like one person at each place is probably assigned some ethics questions, and just have an approach for how you're going to handle it, what your general principles are for ethics questions, and they're usually not trying to trick you. So just practice a few of them.
Okay. Yeah, those are good ones, or tell me about your research, and I can tell you from our program, which has a T32, R25, and all that, for example, they are certainly interested in your research. They're interested in what your role was. Like, did you understand the work, whatever your role was? Can you define your role? And can you say what you learned from your role, whatever it was, be it Pipette King or reviewer or whatever. Just, what was your role? Did you understand the work in general? And things like that. Those are helpful. People who can speak fluently about the project and understanding how their role related to the bigger project. Those are people who, those folks do well on those questions, say for that part of the world. So I always ask every applicant the same dumb question, but I can't give it away here. So
I think be prepared to answer questions about what you like to do outside of medicine. Like that's usually a nice toss up. But make sure you have, a couple of stories to tell about it. That can help you connect with an interviewer if they ask.
Yeah, right on. Right on.
Yeah, along with that, I think wellness is something that's increasingly focused, is an increasing focus in many programs. And so having a way to describe how you maintain work-life balance would be nice. One more that might be upcoming, especially because diversity, equity, and inclusion are just so important, is that I feel free and comfortable to describe how you would add to that in any program.
Yeah, and be conversant about the principles and the directions. So right on. How do you handle? I don't know that we need everybody, but jump in. How do you handle that moment? What questions do you have for our program? We touched on it a bit, but what's your best way to prepare? David, one of your students is in your office getting ready for their interviews. Like you tell, okay, they're going to ask you, what questions do you have about our program? How do you prepare them for that?
Yeah, my students know. I actually think this is one of those things like what's more important than you think. I do think it's important to have a good number of questions ready to fill up the time that are kind of interesting questions. And these are things you can have prepared for it. So I tell them to have them just like ready to go. And I always say, like, you have to divide. There's questions that you're going to ask faculty, and there's questions you're going to ask residents. So you have to make sure that you kind of divide the two.
Right.
That's important to it. But I always say, like I said earlier, what are you most proud of the program is a good one. And then also, in the residents, how do you feel about the, I guess, the interactions outside of work? How do you feel that the faculty interactions are with you? Like, those are nice questions to kind of get a feel of the program. I have a whole list I'm happy to go through and read off, but I think just being prepared with, a good 10 to 20 questions that you want to get the answer to is important.
That seems like a lot. I'll be honest with you. Is that normal? I'm out of the game.
I just say come prepared. That's
okay.
me.
Right. I do like the, what are you most proud of? That's a really sweet way of asking. I often say, what are you most excited about? About coming to work every day. Is a good question to ask, but proud adds an element to it I hadn't thought of. Right, because it's about a connection to the program, in a way. I don't know. Comments on that one? How do you advise students to be prepared for that inevitable end of interview? What questions do you have?
I'm a
Well, can I
fan
just
of,
say,
Yeah, Duncan, and then
go ahead.
Dan.
oh, thank you. I was going to say I'm a fan of asking when students ask faculty or ask residents what they like about the location they're working in, because it's an opportunity to, it's something you should want to know, first of all. So it is a genuine question. But it's also an opportunity. It's kind of like, what are you proud of in the program? It gives the faculty a chance to talk about the things that are important to them. And I think that gives you a little bit more of an unstructured way of learning more about the program and learning things, not just to chew up time, but learning things that may be important to you in your decision.
You've each said it, and Danny, I got you here, but you've each said it in several different ways. Really, let's not forget, however uncertain or unsettling it is, you're going to be an otolaryngologist, and it's your opportunity to really get to know them. So, really, you're assessing them and your fit and your joy, and you're giving them years of your life. Let's get it right. So, Danny, we were going to add to that?
I was just going to say, same advice for this question that I give when my students are rotating. Don't ask the faculty a question that you could look up the answer to in a textbook or on the website. So if you want to know about call, asking me as the non-program director what the call hours are like or what the call division is like is probably not a question that I have the answer to, but asking me how I work with the residents on call, or how a resident can be most successful on call at my program might get you to the same type of information without asking a close-ended question that I might not have the answer to. So I think just make sure you ask questions that really go to the experience of the person across from you rather than informational is a good approach.
Let's go to the next one. That we did a bit on this during the live session. Dr. Glazer, I might turn to you, or please get help, pass this off, whatever. Strategies in general for communications with programs, either running up to the interview or certainly after. Any thoughts, any no-nos, any you should do this, right? Writing thank you notes, whatever. How do you generally approach this?
Well, I don't think we answered this in the panel actually, but it just came to me now. So I know like our program manager will reach out to all of our interviewees beforehand, and it's like automatically it's definitely a pink flag. It might not be a red flag, but it's a pink flag if an applicant has to be emailed several times to do something leading up to the interview. Like they have to sign something on ARS, I think. And so if we have to email you a couple times, like, hey, did you get our email? Are you coming? Did you get this confirmation? That's already a red flag. And then for communication afterwards, I will admit that I actually do like getting emails if we did have a pretty meaningful interaction, just because I just think that's a nice thing to do if we connected on that level. I don't think that it would change my final rank list for anybody, but one of the other things I think of too is like these are connections that otolaryngology is such a small field. These are connections, even if we just interviewed together and you don't match at my program, I've still seen some of those applicants at Academy or other meetings that have come up to me. So it's a nice chance to just kind of connect that way too, even if we don't match together.
I remember some of the people I interviewed with in 1990, and we're still colleagues today. So no, I didn't say 1890, champ. Chelius, I saw that look, 1990.
I think it's hard because every program has a different, like I think every person has a different preference for this. And I don't think
how do we get it right though? What do we tell our guys, Dr. Lee?
I think it's tough. Well, at least for our program, we tell people not to contact us. We just say, we assume we like you, and you assume that, like we assume that everyone's thankful. And so you don't have to, send any emails. We thank you, you thank us. But I think in general, maybe the coordinator knows best. I'm not sure.
But if an applicant feels it in themselves, like, I want to thank Dr. Lee, like that was a really cool talk. I mean, is it going to be like, oh, this person's said thank you regardless? They're not gone, are they?
No, we still get thank you emails, and it's nice, but like Dr. Glazer said, it doesn't necessarily change the
local conditions apply.
Yeah, I agree with. Oh, sorry, I'll be quick. I agree with you. I think most programs, the rank lists are closed within a week afterwards, or even quicker. It's not going to change anything. If you want to say like a nice thank you, like sure, you may not get a response back. It doesn't mean anything bad. It's not going to change anything. I tell the students only email. Really, if you have some major change or some major life circumstance that means that you need to be at or really have a new strong interest in a program, whether that be for like health, family, or personal reasons. But otherwise, for the most part, it's it's a nice thing to do, but it's not going to change anything.
I don't feel good telling somebody, like, if you feel like you want to express gratitude, to not do it. But that's not what you're saying. But I do get your point. Like, it may not be that. Don't expect it's going to make a big difference. But if you want to express yourself, these are colleagues. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
No.
I think
it's okay to disagree with me, believe me.
I think Duncan's advice here is on the money once again, which is be authentic. I think if you have an authentic connection you want to call out and be grateful for, like that is meaningful. I think if you write a pro forma thank you note to every person you interviewed with, I don't know that really, not only does it not help, but it may hurt at some places too. I don't know.
Okay. This was a good part of our conversation, and thanks to my panel our panel for doing such a good job with this. Sharing versus selling. Like you're now, sorry, I went to after the interview. Now you're in game. You're in the interview. How do you express your accomplishments without sounding like you're bragging? During the interview. Does anybody want to start with that? What's a good balance?
I can jump on that
Thank you, Duncan.
if no one
Yes,
else
sir.
has moved. I think that, what I'm interested in knowing and what I'm interested in hearing is, again, what is it about you? And so I think that it helps to talk about what you learned from an experience and an accomplishment and what skills you were able to build from that experience and accomplishment, rather than saying, I got a first authored paper in Laryngoscope. I think it's more helpful to say that on this project, I really got quality experience in grant writing, or I really gained an appreciation for how hard it is to recruit human subjects into a study. And I think I learned some strategies on that will be helpful going forward, and talk about how that builds your skills as a prospective resident. And I think talking about them, an accomplishment is just a mark of having done work. And what I want to know is, how did the work change you and ready you for your residency experience, rather than how big was the trophy.
So when I climbed Mount Everest, it gave me, I'm kidding. Anything else anybody want to add to that?
I also feel like if the question came up, if the interviewer asked you that question, then I'd feel free to answer it honestly and authentically. That's like the key word of this entire webinar tonight. But if you kind of like, it's very easy to tell if it's brought up in a forced way, like we weren't even on that topic, and then now you're telling me that you were the donut eating champion of Wisconsin or something like that. That's I didn't even ask anything about that, and you're bringing it up. So again, be authentic.
Good job. I was that in 2003, but it was short-lived.
I have a
Cool.
question for the panel.
Yes, Dr.
All
Lee,
right,
hit it.
so it actually goes with the donut eating. What do you guys think of people who put props in the background? Thoughts, like a car or a painting that they've painted?
I've had some really great conversations with people about stuff in the background. I will say that. But again, if you're going to put something prominently there, be ready to talk about it.
I think it needs to be like, well, I'll go back to authentic. No, it's got to be thoughtful if you're going to put it in there. It shouldn't be kind of like, how do you express your accomplishments without bragging? You shouldn't like hang up
My Academy Award, for example.
Yeah, like, here's my first place, oral presentation. Like I that's great and all, but if you have little things that you want in there to show a hobby or something, I mean, sure, but I wouldn't push the background stuff. It's a great point, but I wouldn't.
I wonder
if you
if
have
it's
certain things because they're meaningful to you, or it's like some charms like that. But I think that's a very different preference for each. Some interviewers want to see just a plain white background, and others will.
But I wonder if it's a tool for those. Me, I've never met a stranger, right? I could talk anybody's ear off, but maybe for folks who thoughtfully they're looking for some kind of trigger to conversation. Generally, my advice would be, if it wasn't there before you set up your interview, it's probably kind of gross, right, to do it. Even though it's you, if you put it there and it's not there otherwise, I don't like it, because if I ask you if that just went up there, what would you say? But that's just me.
Well, what happened after that question was there was someone had put a guitar on there, and then we found out when we were grouping to talk about the topic, it was that he just played the same song for everybody because everyone wanted to hear him play the guitar, and we had nothing else that was meaningful to discuss about the applicant except for the fact that the guitar playing skills was top notch. So
Right on. Interesting.
I was going to say, be careful of this in the opposite direction as well. If you're interviewing in person, a lot of us wind up interviewing in our colleagues' offices for one reason or another. And so be careful not to take too hard of a stab at what you see unless you're really sure that the person interviewing you is sitting in their office. So
right. Good point. Two big questions left, and then we'll wrap up. how do you acknowledge weaknesses and softer parts of your CV and describe how you've addressed them? It's in a way a flip side of that. Like, how do you respond? I mean, because I think people want to know about this part of your CV. Like, listen, hey, you really, I didn't see a lot of research, or I didn't see, you did well on your boards, but your grades in residency were, I guess that doesn't come up that much. But how do you deal with this second question? How do you acknowledge weaknesses or maybe softer parts of a CV?
I think you have to root it in a story. So I think you can't acknowledge it without telling the story of it. And so I think you need to be prepared, because those weaknesses are probably a big part of your story, your experience of them, your recovery from them. It's an important part of who you are, but I think you have to put it in the context of the story of who you are. So you again, being authentic and making your story relatable. We all have soft spots. We all have failures. And if you can tell a story about it, taking us through the experience and then where you are now is related to it, I think that it adds our global understanding of
How do you
who
get
you are.
ready? I mean, do you practice? I mean, people are telling stories. People talk about themselves. People talk to their friends, but do you literally say, hey, listen, practice your, what happened to me in the summer of 25 story? Do you practice your, this is why I only got passed in otolaryngology? I mean, what do? Do you tell them to drill it with pals?
I tell them to practice all their questions with pals. Tell
Okay.
your stories. Practice, practice, practice all of your stories. I mean, if you have, 15,
Anyone
20
disagree with
stories.
that? Does anyone disagree with that? It's okay to disagree.
I mean, I think be prepared, but don't sound rehearsed. That's just that's
Fly
a hard,
casual.
that's a hard interview skill and just general thing to have, but it's true. You don't want to sound too rehearsed. And like, this is like you're reading off of like a script, but you should be in your head, have kind of the answer and thought process that you want to go to when answering a question like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have folks practice with Zoom as well, because they can record themselves and then view themselves.
One of the things we ask the audience the day, that if I may ask you to reflect on from your preparing your students, like what elements tend to worry them the most, and how do you reassure them or prepare them? We may have covered a lot of this. Duncan, anything you like? What tends to worry the folks the most? Or anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I mean, I think this is for many, not for all, but for many, this is kind of, and I think, I think I said this from you, Dr. Murray, like this is very much like it's your first job interview. And I think that's very concerning for those that haven't been otherwise doing it. But I always like to remind you, like, you are getting interviewed for a reason. You have to remember you're a strong candidate. You've made the interview part. And so try to let that go. And, you are also there to not just for the program to learn about you and to also learn about the program. And the biggest thing that I tell everyone is that some programs are great fits for you and some aren't. And you have to just kind of learn to accept that. Your personality might be an awesome fit for one program and the other program it's not. And even though you want to go to one program, oh my God, I really want to go to the University of Washington. Sorry, Dr. Murray, just the one I'm looking at. Not everyone's personality fits that. And that's not a bad thing if you're going to fit really well at Yale. And that's like where it is. And you have to just kind of learn that different programs have different cultures and you have different personalities, and you have to be ready for that.
Great. Any other universal concerns that we haven't touched on that maybe we could prepare people for? We really did touch on a lot. Okay. I want to make sure we talk about our international grads applying in otolaryngology. I don't know that the advice is unique or different. I hadn't thought of it that way. But tell me from your experience, like, how do you prepare if you have an international grad looking for your advice? How do you prepare for their U.S. otolaryngology program interview? Any experience, any thoughts? again, from having been around for a while, you know, I really do focus on the journey, the story. We find that these are wildly courageous folks who've been through, didn't nothing came easy. I don't know that that's different than lots of applicants. I don't mean that. But it's a nearly universal trait in that group, and they tend to be highly motivated. Um, so I don't know, any comments particularly, because we have so many US grads, but we also have wonderful international grads applying to otolaryngology programs. It's a tough road. Any thoughts?
Oh, yeah, please.
Go ahead, Dr.
Oh,
Lee.
just really quick, but it relates to what I was mentioning before about just highlighting the journey that they've been through. So the fact that they have a residency interview means that they've got a tremendous amount of accomplishment and has already landed them this far to have a conversation with the program. So I think that interview is meant to feature your uniqueness, your unique journey, and so have a have a prepared answer for that. I guess. I mean, not that you have to prepare very much to talk about yourself, but just embrace that and to highlight it would be my advice.
The stakes do feel high, right? Some grads may not get a ton of interviews. Some may, you know, when I'm in those situations on this end of things, you know, I see the intensity, I feel the intensity, sometimes at a very different level when there aren't 10 other interviews behind it. So I think most people are pretty aware of it on this side. So any other comments on that? Authentic, try to make connections, reach out for help.
I would say be ready and prepared to describe your training and have some familiarity with the levels of training in the United States and how to translate what you've done into terms that a US, someone who had never practiced medicine or been involved in medical education outside of the US would understand. Because somewhere I've seen some conversations about these candidates where the attendings who were discussing the candidate weren't really sure where they were in their level of training compared to where a US medical graduate would be. It's like, well, have they done some residency? Is this sort of like an intern year, or and so I think that may be something that will need to be clarified or explained to some of the faculty you're interviewing.
Yeah, no, I think that's very honest. I think that is very real. And yeah, I think some of us probably have some misconceptions, some misperceptions. Right on.
I think following up on that,
please.
One of the best answers I ever got from an international grad was someone who specifically talked about differences they appreciated between their training system and what they've been observing in the US, and actually told me about their process to learn how to write a SOAP note because they didn't document like that in their home country. And they talked about learning what an HPI was, that was not part of their training, but they had observed it as they've been shadowing in the US system, and it had learned how to document like US students document. And that was a very meaningful conversation and told me a lot about them and their interest in getting to know this system.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know statistically or emotionally or anything, you know, what the journey is now compared to before. My dad was an IMG, who did a residency UCLA in anesthesiology, so I know a little bit what this is like for the families. And I'm certainly appreciative of those who welcomed us. So it's a different world in otolaryngology these days. It's hard for a lot of folks, but like I said, it's a great goal. We love our field, and I want to thank each of you. I want to thank the Academy for making time again for this and putting this out there. For our students, you are really what's going on in our Academy. I always tell leadership, I remind them, you're going to be paying all the dues and going to all the meetings, so they better be listening to you. The Academy president this year is Dr. Troy Woodard. He's a wonderful guy, and he's very interested in students. Dr. Rahul Shah, our new EVP, is very interested in students, another wonderful guy. They would love to know how to make the Academy experience even better for medical students, the medical student group. I promise you, if you have any questions, Feel free to direct all your emails to Danny Chelius, or I'm kidding, or to me. We're so grateful, Ms. Bartlett. Dr. Glazer, thank you. I know you had to take a call for your duties. Appreciate you. Great answers again from each of you, Dr. Garber, Dr. Meiklejohn, Dr. Lee, Dr. Chelius. We're so appreciative of this opportunity, and welcome to otolaryngology. It's a great choice.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Good job, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al.